You know, they always start interviews where they're not quite ready.
Yes.
And they're getting mic'd up and they're yapping about something.
Great.
Yeah.
This will be the start of the interview.
Exactly. They always start interviews with a thing. You feel like people are being real.
At 800 episodes, The Simpsons hasn't just mirrored our culture, it has defined it. I'm Liam McEwan, and I'm heading inside the Fox studio lot to talk to the creative minds who keep the world's favourite yellow family at the centre of the cultural conversation.
Do you realize how historic this is? This is the Bart Simpson soundstage. And I don't know, I think the people that run the soundstage named it. So it's historic. So many episodes, in fact, all of them were recorded here. This has been where we've been since, 1991, 92? Well, there's nothing that beats having all of the actors in the same room at the same time, bouncing off each other. And so historically, there are music stands and microphones all around the room. And the actors choose the same seats every time. Like, you don't move around. I mean, that's my seat. I moved in there in 1995, and I'm not leaving. Dan Castellaneta, you would not. That's not Homer. That's a very dignified guy, very shy and retiring. But when he's on, oh my God! There were times I used to sit right over there when we were recording, but Dan made me laugh so much that I wrecked too many takes. If Dan does Krusty the Clown, I can't. I'm on the floor. There's Julie Kavner as Marge. There's Harry Shearer as a billion characters. There's Hank Azaria as a billion characters. Yardley Smith as Lisa. Basically, she just does Lisa. And Nancy Cartwright, Bart. And the interesting thing is, and I don't recall this, but when they came in and auditioned for the roles back in the 1987 for the Tracy Ullman show, Yardley auditioned for Bart's part and Nancy auditioned for Lisa. And obviously went, no, switcheroo. Because Nancy was Bart. She completely channeled him.
Yeah, good to go.
All right, this is F-16 with Nancy, 23A, take one. Action.
All right, this is Bart.
So wait, you really having a date night at Clangers? That's a lame nostalgia bar for you voicemail-leaving dinosaurs.
Golly, now that I think about it, 800. That's a lot. When I got the call from my agent, they said it was a little vignette that is connecting the Tracy Ullman show to the commercial. So it somehow is a segue. And then after the commercials are done, there'll be another little vignette, a interstitial bumper, whatever you want to call it, to go back into the Tracy Ullman show. And I said, oh, okay. It sounded different. I'd never heard of anything like that before. That was new. And she said, so they want you for this character. Her name is Lisa Simpson. She's 8 years old and the middle child. That's all I knew. So when I showed up, and it was here, but I remember going into this room, and the room was kind of dark, and it looked like kind of maybe college student furniture. It wasn't like a super, kind of they threw it together at the last minute sort of a thing. And Matt was sitting behind the desk, and I walked in, and he greeted me and shook my hand. I said, hi, Matt, nice to meet you. Hey, listen, I was out there, and I noticed that, there's also Lisa, that's fine, eight-year-old middle child. But then there's this Bart. He looks like 10 years old, school-hating, underachiever, and proud of it. I'd kind of like to do him. Would that be all right? Would you mind? I want to do the kid. He's like, oh, yeah. He's perfectly affable, this guy. He was just so easy. Not quite his area, doing this recording and auditioning people. This is brand new for him, too, which I didn't really realize at the time. But in retrospect, he was just so willing to have anything. And so that was a good thing. So then I went up there and I had an idea in mind. It had come to me in the lobby instantly of what that sound is, and I'd done it before, but not to the degree that I committed doing it at that moment. He's been other characters, Galaxy High. He was one of the ponies in My Little Pony. Yeah, and it just but not with the personality that Bart. It was a similar voice, but not with that personality. So when I said blah 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 blah, he's like, whoa, that's him. Wow, that's it. You're hired. On the spot, boom, done.
I had to use rusty scissors to get this stupid shock collar off my neck.
There are still people that yet don't know, that it's a woman that does the voice. That's surprising, but on the other hand, it's not so surprising. If they don't watch it and they're not watching, social media and looking up the history of the show and like going to Google or whatever, they're not going to know. And so then it would be surprising, but more fun for me then to have fun with them.
So wait, you're really having date night at Clangers? That's a lame nostalgia bar for you voicemail-leaving dinosaurs.
Does the mood of the day kind of affect how the voice comes out, if that makes sense? Like if you're in a really good mood as Bart, all of a sudden sound different to if it's not a great day. Like talk me through that. What zone do you need to be in?
That is a great question. The mood of the day, if it started out like something is not happening right at home, or the freeway, all of a sudden it's like it was only supposed to be a 45-minute drive and it ends up being like an hour and a half, and I realize, oh my gosh, I got to let somebody know I'm showing up late and I'm so sorry. I could bring that in, or else I could just stop, not have that thought, leave that outside the door and come in. I will guarantee you every single time I come in here, I am better when I leave than when I first arrive. It brings everybody, it lifts the spirit up, it makes you feel good, because the scripts, number one, are written so well, and then the process on how we do it, and I make it a game for myself, because we do take after take after take, and sometimes it's like, that was perfect, but let's do it again. Somehow I've got to take that direction, and how do I change that? How do I make it so that you're getting what you want as the producer? And sometimes I don't get it, and I have to say, just give me a line reading. I'm not offended by it, because if I've done take after take after take and I'm not delivering what they want, just tell me how you hear it in your head, and then I just mimic that.
Whoa, I get to live here? I get to live here? I get to live here? I get to live here?
The catchphrase, I believe, by definition, is something that catches on to the public, and they start to repeat it then, and there's a whole group agreement about how funny that phrase is, and so it catches on and it lives a life of its own. But when we're doing it, get bent. I didn't know that was going to catch on. I didn't do it. Nobody saw me do it. You can't prove anything. It seems a little long for a catchphrase, but it worked.
Well, because we've been doing it so long, everybody's super reliable. You don't have to explain anything to the actors. They get it, and they get it quickly. So that's great, And also they're very protective, not only of their own characters, which you could imagine, but they're protective of the show. And every so often, the writers, they're kind of cranky and ornery, and they write stuff that maybe the actors don't like, and it's like going too far, and they pull us back.
The evolution of him, there has been quite a change in him. When we were the little vignettes on the Tracy Ullman Show, Bart and Lisa were very similar in personality, and they were always fighting, and Lisa individuated and became this vegan-eating, Buddhist, civil rights, human rights, women's rights kind of liberal, and Bart just continued to be a bit of a recalcitrant, troublemaking, school-hating underachiever, and proud of it. He's been fairly consistent that way, but because it's a whole 21 minutes as opposed to 30 seconds, there's room to flesh him out literally and give him more of an arc in terms of emotion. so that you can see that there's a sensitivity that he has for his sister. He really does deep down inside love her. And I think that's part of the success of the show, is that the executives have really created these characters that are memorable, that the public, one way or another, through many characters, because there's so many characters in Springfield, that they can relate to.
Back at the very, very beginning, when we were doing little tiny short segments for the Tracy Ullman show, it really was just a few animators. And it turns out, so they hired me to do these shorts and write them and draw the designs. What I didn't realize is I thought that the animators were going to take my crummy drawings and make them really slick and look like a regular, piece of a professional animation. And they were just tracing my stuff. And that's one of the reasons why The Simpsons looks the way it does. And as weird as they look now, back in the old days, the prehistoric days, whew, man, it is crude.
Okay, so show and tell time, ladies and gentlemen. What do you say? This is sort of a collection from different images from the shorts. So you can see how, shall we say, crude things were. Well, we're kind of making it up as we went along, from episode to episode. Although Grandpa is pretty much unchanged. That's Grandpa from the very first appearance in the shorts. This is from the Tracy Ullman days. So this is actually one of the last episodes we did. So Bart is looking pretty close to how he ended up looking, certainly in the first season. And this is Bart wrestling with a rubber octopus underwater in the bath that looks remarkably similar to Homer, of course. So this is some of my silly animation for this particular scene. That's the first Homer strangling Bart image from Family Portrait. That's where it all started. Good old-fashioned home violence. And what's interesting, this was actually a still, because it was the end of the final joke. The final punchline was, why you little strangle, and no movement. So we didn't do a moving joke until the Bart Simpson show short. These are images from the very first script that I directed, called Bart the Genius. And in it, you can sort of see little sketches in there that sort of ended up in the episode itself. A lot of these things I was doodling in the script, and they did kind of end up in the final episode. So it's very interesting. I don't know, maybe I should give this to a museum of some sort. And these are some of the earliest sketches for the opening title sequence. I was just sort of fooling around, just trying different things. And you can sort of see, some of these things stuck.
That is insane.
But I always find it so interesting to see how these things start. It's just like, pencil sketches. Oh, there's Lisa. Yeah, so at this point, she's playing the saxophone. Yeah, and these are just like, oh, there's Maggie. What do you know? So it started off very roughly. There's even a more sort of complete, like, sort of fleshing out the storyboard. Sort of different version of the shots we didn't use, but it was the first thing I did on the show. Once we were told, in the beginning of '89, we're making it into a series. I was working with Matt Groening and Sam Simon on designing the opening title sequence, and that's when we realized we didn't have a gag for Lisa, because her character hadn't been developed, and it was developed on the spot in that meeting, because I basically pointed out as I was pitching to everybody, including Jim Brooks, that we don't have a gag for Lisa. We have a gag for everybody else. And it's okay, what should we do for Lisa? And I suggested, well, maybe she's in the band and maybe she plays the tuba, because I play the tuba. And so Jim said it, and I swear he said it this quickly. He said, well, I don't know about the tuba, but what if she played the baritone saxophone? In fact, what if she played it really well? That could be her character. She could be the genius kid of the family that nobody appreciates. Boom.
There wouldn't be a show without David, that's for sure. Just draws everything really funny. And whenever I've worked with him now for 35 years, I'll say, oh, we'd like this. And he comes back with a very funny thing I didn't expect. That's a different, it's hard to describe, and it's not just him, but it's just, individual style and wit coming in to make it not just a generic, piece of animation.
I've spent 38 years now trying to get them to draw the characters correctly. It's still, I was talking yesterday with the animators and the writers about, let's have another meeting. We got to figure out how to shift perspective and do it more cinematically, and we're always trying to improve. The great thing about the success of The Simpsons is that in its wake, I'm not sure exactly what the chronology of this, because Beavis and Butthead and South Park were pretty quick around at the same time. But after Beavis and Butthead and South Park, there was an explosion in animation that was amazingly creator-driven, and all these shows didn't look like any other shows. And to me, although I can take no credit for it, I love that there is this entire culture of animation now.
Is it true that you put your initials in Homer?
At the very beginning, when I first designed Homer, I thought, oh, here's something cool. I'll make M with the little zigzag on his hair and make his ear a G. So yes, the very first design of that. But I realized that it would get really distracting and annoying, so I axed it. And people say, oh, look at, there's the MG in Homer's hair. And I go, well, it's not a G. There's a little C, but it's not a G. That would be insane.
There's a huge charm to the hand-drawn style, to Matt's style, which we try to infuse no matter what form the show's in. And there's a lot of more information that came in with HD. There was like a drawn, cruder look at the beginning that people miss. So there's different eras, but we're always trying to have the same style and to make it relatable as characters. At the beginning, it was fantastic animation for television. It was really good. And by season 2, it had really gotten into the style that people have grown accustomed to, with a style guide and very clear, delineations on how each character would be animated. So when those first shows aired, people weren't going, oh, they look rough. They were like, these are great.
Tell me why Bart's shirt was blue in all of the early marketing.
Gosh, I don't know. I just think it was an arbitrary decision. Yeah. It might be,
Nobody knows why. I mean, I don't know, somebody in the merch business decided, oh, it's blue. Oh, I'm wrong? Well, I'm sticking with it. I don't know.
Another interesting merchandise thing that I think was fascinating from you from the beginning was the name.
Oh, my name.
So recognizable.
Right.
What was the decision behind that?
Well, just generally, when you think about cartoons and animation and so forth, that maybe other than Walt Disney, there's no names on animation, right? And I thought, well, why not? Let's do it. Might as well. And I thought it was interesting for the show because it puts an individual, happens to be me, but it puts an individual on the art. The other reason my name is on stuff is because I had a very good attorney, Susan Grode, who actually, it was her idea and she insisted on it. And at the time, you know what Fox said? Doesn't cost us an extra penny. Go for it. You can have whatever you want. I like it.
I'm sure you do.
But it's also interesting. It's because it is kind of my signature. So I can tell when something is a forgery. And there's many, many secrets, and I shouldn't give them away, but I'll just give away one of them. If you notice, my signature is generally, if I actually drew it, if it's a signed drawing by me, it's in the lower right-hand corner. So if you put the signature, a hand-drawn signature by me, and it's on Bart's forehead or whatever, I would never do that. So I know that's a fake. And by the way, here's the other thing. So eBay and all the rest of that, full of fakes, full of stuff. And it doesn't even look, it's like really bad imitations of my signature. There are a few pretty good ones, but I can always tell. The merchandise and all the extracurricular stuff that we did, for me, was an extension of the storytelling. In fact, there's a term I found out in licensing and merchandising called label slap, and that's when you just take whatever the picture is and you slap it on the side of a lunchbox or a t-shirt. So what we tried to do with The Simpsons is like each item, each thing, each video game, whatever, told its own story or at least had its own joke. So underachiever and proud of it. That would be an example of not just Bart's face on on the t-shirt.
Do you think because you still have some of these original names with you now, that's where some of the heart of the show still is?
It's so funny. We have people like Matt Selman, who's been on the show since, 2010? Maybe, I'm just guessing. Let's say 2010. He's a new guy.
In the beginning, it was really hard, and probably, even when I started, there were so many great, fantastic Simpsons episodes in the books. It was a little bit like, what else is there to do? But now, 100 years after that, it feels like that's the best part of the job. And the most important part of the job is knowing that you have a sixth sense inside of what is originality on a show that repeats itself and Groundhog Days and resets itself all the time. What is originality? And finding that originality was really hard for me when I first started. But now, I don't want to say that it's easy, but it's more fun.
Who's the hardest character to write for?
Bart's pretty hard because I wasn't cool, and Bart is cool. So a cool 10-year-old is, kind of weird because if you write him too big, it's not real, and if you don't write him big enough, he loses the edge. So Bart's the hardest. That's, I think, one reason, not because of a conscious decision, but that the emphasis shifted a little to Homer over the course of the years because the writers tended to think more like Homer. And, or Lisa, that's the one I empathize with. And now maybe Grandpa.
Al Jean, was running the show for a long time, and he's like Mount Rushmore, Simpsons Mount Rushmore guy, and, so funny and like made so many great episodes. And like Jim Brooks, is so involved in the show, and Matt, and learning to write for those three guys and what, to say, like, to impress them and like deliver episodes that they think are good after the OGs already created this amazing template. It's just an amazing challenge, but amazingly fun and validating to like, try to like every week, how do you like entertain your heroes?
I think we always, work incredibly hard to stay fresh and be funny, and have great directing. It is kind of funny because we were the most subversive thing in the world when we aired, and stuff has come out since where South Park does what they do great, but we've kind of been at the sort of same level. So society has changed, and so now we're kind of like the establishment where we used to be anti-establishment.
What makes a good episode?
Obviously funny and clever, and the biggest thing starting from the beginning is that it's got to relate to real human emotions. Jim Brooks was always great at doing comedy that had a heart, and The Simpsons has from the beginning. So many people, will say one of the things we relate to is that we really care about them. These characters right from the beginning, being animated. Nonetheless, characters like Marge are just incredibly relatable.
The formula, I think, of the show that made the show so successful at the beginning, and I hope that we're still sticking to, is something really funny, but also very character-based on the characters, and has an emotional core to it, and that's not just, an excuse to make a lot of jokes. So, I would say that when we're first coming up with stories, working with Matt Selman, our showrunner, that the first thing that we talk about isn't like, what's the look of it or what's the crazy thing? It's like, what is the emotional story? What's going on between Bart and Marge? What's Lisa's story? Like, and everything else comes from that.
We've done 800 episodes, and I'm really glad we didn't do like a big overarching story, because you would just look at the beginning and go, I don't, care how it started anymore. But the fact that they're each on their own, you can still watch an episode from season 2 and it holds up. And, it's cartoon logic. People don't age. You always return to square one at the end of the show. And there's no question that was a big influence on longevity.
The fact that The Simpsons don't age just makes the fact that you're kind of starting every episode at the same place where the first episode started. That's a good place to start. I mean, do these characters have the emotional memory of the 800 things that have happened to them? plus a movie, plus the video games, plus Lord knows what else. I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that. Like sometimes the episodes, The Simpsons, our behavior could have been almost at any time of the course of the show, and sometimes they're all, phone addicted, ADD mush heads like everyone is in reality. It's kind of like both. It's like when it serves us, they can be checked out. The kind of Black Mirror-y real life technology that has changed our existence is present in the show, but then sometimes it just isn't there, and we can do either one. The DNA of the show is subversive, and part of the subversiveness is that we are playful with the paradoxes of a show, a 40-year-old show where the characters don't age. And that is something fun to play with, not something to try to make sense into one perfect puzzle of canon that people can marry themselves to. Although if you want to go down the canon hole, everybody have fun with it. When you are creating anything, the biggest challenge is how does the audience care about what happens to the characters, right? Do they care? And every episode, people care about what happens to the 4 main Simpsons characters because they're such great characters, and they all are funny and vulnerable and, emotionally real and also super dumb. And people really care about Lisa. They really care about Marge. They really care about Homer. They really care about Bart. And now they really care about even, a lot of the extended people like Moe. There are characters that can carry a whole episode that barely have the Simpsons in them, and that's okay also.
Secondary characters have become figures in themselves. You don't even need to be an obsessive Simpsons watcher to know who some of these some of these people are.
That is something that astonishes me. I mean, I love the show. Obviously, I pay attention to the show, but the fact that people know who Milhouse is amazing. Milhouse was created to have have somebody for Bart to talk to in a Butterfingers candy bar commercial.
This is some of my first sketches of Milhouse, who was designed for the first Butterfinger commercial in 1988, November of 1988. So he was not designed for the shorts. He was not designed for the show. He was sort of intermediate. And he was drawn by Matt for a show for NBC that was never produced. He had a sheath of different characters and was showing me and Wes Archer, what character should this best friend of Bart be for this commercial? And he was flipping through them, and Wes and I saw that and said, "Oh, that's the guy. He's awesome." I said, "Okay."
Disco Stew, for instance, was a one-joke character that he was looking for a jacket at a yard sale that said Disco Stud, but he bought it because the D had fallen off, and his name was Disco Stew, and that's I mean he's immortal.
They have their own place where they're coming from. They have their own backgrounds. They have their own story. I mean, Nelson, that's quite a story that he's got going on. His dad left him when he was pretty young, apparently to go get milk, and never came back. And he's got this special mother who works at Hooters, and that's his lifestyle, lives in a trailer, but he can sing and play the guitar. So there's some hope there for this kid growing up to do something maybe decent. He also has a crush on
the incredibly hot Mrs. Simpson. Then why didn't you make a move? Then why didn't you make a move? Then why didn't you make a move? Then why didn't you make a move?
Ralph is a little tough one. I think he's the most challenging for the writers because he just, he's a walking non sequitur pretty much. But every time Ralph is in the scene, and as soon as he opens his mouth, you're going to get a funny line. I think it'd be tough to write a whole script about him, but I got wind that that's in the works, so that will be fun. And then there's also talking to myself. That's a whole different thing. And I know that physically when I'm standing behind a microphone and when I do Ralph Wiggum, it's natural that my eyebrows go up.
But when I do Nelson Muntz, I tend to furrow my brow.
So it's like you take on a whole personality with my whole being, and out it comes, When it comes time that I am talking to myself, so to speak. I take on that beingness and immediately pop into the other character, then switch back to the other one, and it's a fun challenge. And I think if you can't really separate out the differences between the characters, you're going to have a hard time doing the job.
Rod, Todd, this is God. What are you doing on the radio? What do you mean, what am I doing on the radio? I created the universe, stupid kid. Sorry, forgive my brother.
I mean, you have to be able to jump back and forth like that.
Everything's a trailer? Everything's a trailer?
When the show started to become so overanalyzed, what was that experience like?
Well, very early on, when the internet first came along, and no matter, we were doing what are now considered the best episodes of all time, classic. Every single week after the episode would air, somebody would be on the internet saying worst episode ever, every single week. And in fact, that's where Comic Book Guy came from, is just sort of a way of responding to fans who don't like anything. Here's the thing about being a fan, and reacting to humor, reacting to comedy. You can always say, well, that's not funny. Anybody can say, that's not funny, and they're right. If they, they're right. So the thing that I don't care about hearing from anybody about anything, that's not funny or that's boring. Those are, to me, the laziest reactions you can get. What I like is I like analysis and I like criticism. I think it's great, but that's not funny and that's boring. Ugh. That annoys me. When you're on that many episodes, you have your original fans who get tired of the show. They grow old and they die. But the new generation comes in, and they're kids that are watching the show for the first time, for whom the new episodes are the classic episodes because they haven't seen the other ones. So there you go. And by the way, you know how they say The Simpsons predicts the future? Well, I can tell you this, because we are time travelers. The Simpsons will be on in 1,000 years. Still on. Unfortunately, fans are going to say the show's been going downhill for the last 500 years.
Well, the predictions are accidental. Like, we're not from the future.
The predictions are all fake now. They're just done by AI the next day, and people all go, oh my God, how do they do it? And I throw up my hands in despair for the gullibility of mankind, or the willful ignorance of mankind. The fake ones are going to get so good soon enough that, like, it's really going to be complete mush. Right now you can tell. Soon you won't be able to tell. But, like, I'm not fighting it anymore. It keeps us in the news. It keeps the algorithms. It keeps us in the front of the algorithms. So you know what, AI geniuses out there, every time any crazy thing happens in real life, make a fake version, put it on the internet. Everyone can say, how do they do it? Are they wizards? And we did it. We predicted it all. We predicted everything.
Patriots suck!
One of my earliest Simpsons memories was not being allowed to watch it when I was a kid.
That was the best move ever, when the culture decided The Simpsons was too outrageous, and if you wore a Bart Simpson underachiever t-shirt to school, you got kicked out. That was the best thing for us.
What was it like for you to create something that caused such social discourse in that way?
It's even back then, it was very silly, I thought, and so I didn't take it seriously. I knew it would blow over. People turned to the next outrage a week later. And so that was funny, In fact, so we got in trouble because Bart Simpson had a t-shirt that said Bart Simpson underachiever, and then he had a little dialogue balloon that said, and proud of it, man. And people thought, oh, he's promoting underachieving, and my point was, no, underachiever is a label that educators use. It's not, no kid calls him or herself an underachiever. So to be proud of it was just a funny thing. Then we did a follow-up t-shirt, Lisa Simpson overachiever, and she said, damn, I'm good. And, they were still mad. I mean, one of the things we did at the very beginning is they asked us, is this a kid show or an adult show? And we said, it's for adults. And that was the best instantaneous decision that we made, because it meant that we could do a wide range of jokes that if you said it was a kid's show, we couldn't do. And in fact, even though it was a show that we said was for adults at the very beginning, Fox, as loose as it was, were freaked out by some of the things we did in the show. Homer wanted Marge to wear some lingerie, and this is the line: I want you to wear that blue thing with the things. That outraged the Fox censor. Like, what, the blue thing with the things? What does that even mean, right? We got it on, by the way.
Has, I guess, this new streaming world allowed you to tell jokes and gags that maybe you weren't able to?
That may be true. I'm not quite aware. Certainly, we don't have hardly any notes for inappropriateness. But the thing that's loosened up for us is the time, because things are tied to commercial breaks. We still do 3 acts or sometimes 4 acts because we're on the Fox network. But for the stuff, for Disney, we go wild, and we can stretch out a little bit.
Disney Plus, the fact that The Simpsons is on Disney Plus has really exposed us to a new generation. I mean, we don't write the show for 8 to 12-year-olds. We write it for ourselves. But if it's an 8 to 12-year-old's favorite show for 2 or 3 years of their life before they move on to something else, that's a big win for us. And it's a different kind of audience engagement that not every show gets to have. So, I'm always curious, like, what those legions of Disney Plus bingers are, how their Simpsons fanhood sort of manifests itself into later in life. Disney has been as supportive. I know this just sounds like something you're supposed to say, but Disney has been as supportive as you can possibly imagine, particularly by putting us on Disney Plus, which wasn't an obvious thing to do as they were ramping up with that streamer in the big streaming wars of the end of the teens in the early 2000s. Like, maybe was The Simpsons too grown up for Disney Plus? I mean, not anymore, but like at the time, it wasn't obvious. But instead, we became like the backbone of the streamer. Like, we became like The Office, the Friends, the Big Bang Theory, the bingey thing for Disney Plus. And so just the numbers, luckily the numbers backed up that it was a great match of kind of younger people and Simpsons fans together, just really wanted to watch tons of episodes.
What do you see when you watch the show?
I don't see me. I see him, which might be different if it were me on camera. I think that would be harder to look at. But because he's a 10-year-old spiky-headed boy, it's pretty easy to recognize and just actually enjoy him as a entertainment. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan of the show.
All right.
Yeah, what do you think?
I like it.
Yeah. It's huge, shoes to step in. It's amazing years of music from Alf and Danny, and I think our job is to keep that legacy going. So I did make sure to go back and study the music to to make sure that we're speaking the same language. This is a very vulnerable moment for me, you know. I'm not hiding behind the computer screen right now where I usually compose my music. Everyone's just going to hear the notes for what they are. I think the showrunners and the writers have been so, because they're the best in the business and they've been doing this forever, they've been such a guiding light to us for the music. When we're going to use music, when we're going to be silent, you know, when is the music stepping on the joke, when is the music helping the joke? Do we need music here, or is it just putting a hat on a hat? It's these sort of intricacies that make the show what it is, and I think they're such professionals that in telling me where the music should go, that it's more their vision that I'm just following. Everybody is so lovely, and it's such a rare occurrence. Like in every department, just such lovely people, and I feel like that's 95% of why it works. But also figuring out where we fit in that process. I mean, they've been doing this for 37 years. I've been not even alive for that long, right? So where do I fit in? It's like I just need to find my lane and hopefully stay in it and do what everybody, you know, whatever makes the wheels turn. The first thing I do is just try to find a sound palette that's appropriate for that episode. Like if we're doing a parody of something and they want something to really sound like that movie or that song or whatever we're doing, it's my job to sort of research that thing and go, okay, we're going to need this, this, and this. And, you know, does it sound enough like that? Does it sound too much like that? You know, there's a line. So it's like finding that sound palette, and then I usually just start noodling on the piano until I find something I like, and maybe that's like the theme for that episode. I think you know you got it right when it makes you laugh. That's a big part of my process in scoring the show, is I have to see how I react. How do I feel when I see this? And if it gives me a big LOL, for a lack of a better term, then I know that the music is functioning. But, you know, they'll tell me if it's not. Well, traditionally we would spot the episode on a Friday and then have the weekend to sort of write it, hopefully get the showrunners a V1 by like Monday, Tuesday, and then they give notes, and then we would score the following Friday.
What do you want your stamp to have been on this era of The Simpsons?
I don't know, if my stamp was like someone who brought a new, fresh voice to the music and kept our jokes funny, wrote us funny songs. Yeah, that's the dream.
It blows my mind, some of the names that you've had. I didn't even need to read them out, but I'll read some of them. I mean, you've had 3 of the Beatles, for goodness sake.
Right.
The Stones, Gaga. You had the King of Pop in season 3.
Michael Jackson called me. I was working late in my office at 10 p.m. My phone rang. It never rings. Hi, this is Michael Jackson. And I hung up because, you know, it was obviously a prank. And he called back, no, it really is, don't hang up. So that was my introduction to Michael Jackson. He didn't want credit. Okay. Yeah, he didn't want credit, and the reasoning was a little mysterious and murky to me. I don't quite understand that. And he did do the voice of Michael Jackson, or the lunatic who thought he was Michael Jackson, but he didn't do the singing.
Why couldn't he sing? Was that a record label thing?
He said it was a label contractual obligation that he couldn't do it. Could be, I don't know. Well, and here's one other little thing. So he wrote a song, "Happy Birthday, Lisa," right? In which we have a little acoustic version on the show. And I told my sister Lisa, who I named the character after, I said, "Hey, I got Michael Jackson to write you a song." So
yeah, I tried to, you know, be kind of cool about it all. I didn't want to jump up and down and present myself foolishly. I admired him a great deal. And I found out that he definitely was a huge fan of The Simpsons. And this was at a time when they had just come out with a prototype of a talking Bart doll. And unfortunately, the string was a little short, because when you pulled on the string, it was like, "Don't have a cow, man. Eat my shorts." "No way, man." "Oh, mama." It was too fast and too high, and it flunked. But I went to Toys R Us and I bought all of them. There were dozens, and I bought all. They were only $10 each. And it's a doll that's about this big, and anybody that has that in a box, that's probably worth a lot these days, you know. But I thought, God, what a cool present. And I didn't care that it wasn't going to be made anymore, because here they are. I need 2 shopping carts, you know, let's fill it up. But gave those away as presents, and that was a cool thing. But working with him, I had that doll, and Jim Brooks, we went together, and I showed Jim, and he's going to love it. So I had it behind my back, and I took, and he knew I was hiding something, but I shook his hand. I said, "I have a surprise for you." "Don't have a cow, man." He's like, "Oh," and he took it. He goes, "I love Bart."
James L. Brooks, the Oscar-winning genius director, knew everybody in Hollywood, and everybody wanted to work with him, so he could call up whoever. Dustin Hoffman, very early, who also didn't take a credit on the show. Really? He was under a pseudonym too. Elizabeth Taylor, Kirk Douglas. Well, there's still some people that we are trying to get, so if I say them, then we won't get them. So we've got a few people that we're trying to reach out to. However, the list of people who are willing to do the show and have told me personally and have told other people working on the show, that's a very long list.
The hardest things I've ever done is when I remember my agent called and they said, because I always wanted to be on The Simpsons in the first 5 years. I loved that show. And they called and said, good news and bad news. They want you on The Simpsons. The bad news is they want you to play yourself. Now, eventually I begged them and they gave me a secondary character where you didn't recognize me. When you're playing another character, you don't have to take responsibility for anything that you do. It's the character, it's not you. When you're playing yourself, you say, would I really say that?
I personally find when we have a celebrity playing himself or herself, we've done it so much that I like it when we have people playing characters, not themselves.
The ones that never said yes were U.S. presidents, and I don't think we're ever going to do that. But Mike Scully, one of the showrunners, tried to get Bruce Springsteen really hard, and he got everybody in the E Street Band except Bruce. Bruce just wouldn't do it. You know, he's one of the people that said no. I mean, you don't have to do it.
You know, it's become such a part of my lifestyle. You know, I'm used to doing it all the time, and I don't know. I'm not looking forward to the day when we're done, and there then is no schedule for me to go in to show up at Fox or wherever we're doing the table read or the record. Fortunately, it's in the future quite a bit, but tick-tock. And who knows what'll happen after 40. If we're all still around and ticking, maybe we'll have another negotiation. Who knows? What am I most proud of? Probably the fact that I am part of such a phenomenon, an icon, a legacy, if you will, that I've got to be a part of that. And to have that the rest of my life, to carry that with me, like a nice fur coat or something, fake fur, that I wear, and I can take it off whenever I want, and I can put it on when it's appropriate and show it off a little bit when I want to. I think that is what a privilege, what an honor.
You can't take it lightly, the film music thing and the TV music. It's like such a rare opportunity that people get to do the thing that they dreamed about doing, right? So then, when you get to do that thing, you really don't want to f*** it up. I mean, I still pinch myself every day when I'm working on this show.
You don't really expect to be allowed to work on your favorite thing. One doesn't expect that. So when it does happen, it's an interesting, emotional little bit of a roller coaster in that you're on one hand as excited as you possibly can be, and on the other hand, you're as terrified as you can be. So you don't want to F it up. We're so lucky. We are so lucky. We have the best writers, best actors, best musicians, best animators. Like, we have the best. Everyone's just been doing it for so long. They're really good at it. I'm just proud of the fact that the show, to me, still feels like the show, yet I think we're doing original stuff, and that we're not just repeating ourselves, and we're not any more than repetition is baked into any set of stories with the same characters. That, to me, we don't do episodes that just feel like it's another one of those, it's another one of that.
What I'm most proud of is that we're still surprising ourselves. You know, we're still making ourselves laugh. I mean, every single day there's something new. You think, oh my God, maybe we'll get sick of it. Because animation is a pain in the ass. I mean, it's hard. And it requires a lot of work, a lot of sweat, a lot of tearing your hair out, and you got to get it right, because if you don't get it right, you got to do it again. And by the way, I'm not talking about me. My job is easy. I look at designs and go, yes, okay, or try again, or whatever. Or mostly my notes are use fewer lines in order to draw stuff. Also, I say take off the eyebrows. Most of the Simpsons characters don't have eyebrows. If they have eyebrows, then probably I'm against it, except for Milhouse. Milhouse's eyebrows are part of his personality.
The best thing about the show is I'll have people come up to me and say, my parents were splitting up. I was going through a bad time as a kid, and your show got me through it. The Simpsons got me through it, and I just would go, oh, this couldn't mean more.
People often ask me when I was, wanted to be a cartoonist and animator, they said, well, what goals do you have? And I said, I don't know. The only goal that I would love to see happen is to be involved in some animation project that makes a difference to people. So I guess I can check that one off. So that's why I'm fine. I'm fine. I had enough. Check, please.
It's very humbling, There's a great responsibility that goes along with this, because all of us are the originals, and there is a responsibility, in what we say out there and how we behave, and I'm aware of that. The Simpsons, we are still standing, but we're still here, so wow, that's phenomenal.
Believe it or not, there's still stories that we haven't gotten around to that are just in my head that I want us to do.
I mean, there's no end in sight. We're going to go to season 40 at least. Full steam ahead.